start. And so we're going to start with an interview. I'm like, hey guys, welcome to the show. We are here with Ric Montemillo,
deMontmollin.
deMontmollin. All right. And Will Hensler
Yep.
from St. Augustine Distillery, VP of Productions and Chief Operating Officer. Just kind of let you guys introduce yourselves, say how you're doing, and then we're going to talk about how you guys got started. So we'll start with whoever wants to go first.
Cool.
All right. So it'll be Will first because Ric pointed off screen. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the show. Today I'm here with a very special guests because we know here we love to support local. I'm here with two of the, I guess, founders, key members, like just the bread and butter of St. Augustine Distillery, one of my favorite distilleries out here. For anyone who knows me knows I did not like gin until I tried their gin, and then slowly but surely I got into the rest of their spirits. But today I'm here with Will Hensler, Chief Operating Officer of St. Augustine Distillery, and of course, Ric. You're going to have to say the last name for me, Demont. Go ahead.
deMontmollin. Everybody has a problem with it.
I hate mispronouncing it. What was that?
I said you nailed your own last name, Ric. Well done.
Thank you. I've been practicing.
It's an achievement. How you fellas doing today?
Doing good, man. Stoked to be on with you. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it. Before we got started, off air, we talked about the fact that Florida is dreary. So I'm glad that you guys still took some time, hung out with me tonight and this during the holidays. But for all those who aren't local and don't get to see you guys on a regular basis, because there's products everywhere, at least for us in Orlando, I see it in Total Wine, ABC, love your stuff. Tell us about St. Augustine Distillery and just give us an elevator speech. Will, if you don't want mind starting.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I mean, I guess I kind of start with like my own origin and interaction to it. I got into bourbon and craft cocktails probably about like 2010 or so, and went down the rabbit hole like all of us do, and started discovering. I was in St. Pete at the time, that there was these great craft cocktail bars all around me, and I could kind of explore that journey. And then you kind of go from the world of creating cocktails to appreciating the spirit on its own, and it opened up the world of whiskey to me. And my father had lived in St. Augustine, kind of retired here, and he said, "Man, there's this crazy dude. He's opened up a distillery. He wants to make bourbon. You got to come talk to him." And at the time, I'm like, "You can't make bourbon in Florida," because I didn't know what I was talking about. But I was like, "I'm going over there. I'm going to meet this dude." And I met Phil McDaniel, who's our founder and kind of the creative mind. It's really Phil and his business partner Mike, who started our company here, along with 22 investors that supported their idea. But I just fell in love. The dude was a dynamo. He had converted this old facility and was making something that I cared for. And at the time, he didn't even have bourbon in a bottle. He had vodka and vodka only. Made me a great vodka martini, but more importantly, showed me the process, opened up the bourbon barrels, let me smell them, and it just stuck with me. And I was in a completely different industry. I've never even worked at a restaurant, never worked at a bar. Was in retail operations for a company in the marine world, and was outfitting boats with marine electronics, and works well in Florida. There's a lot of business, but it wasn't my drive, my passion. And happened to reconnect with Phil when he was looking to start a second distillery in St. Augustine in 2019. And that's kind of where it all began. I came out, saw the spot, and my wife and I were moving a week later, and then got introduced to Ric as he was hired as our first distiller, and just been rolling ever since. It's been an incredible journey.
That is awesome. It's so interesting to hear this, that you're probably the third or fourth person I've interviewed that did not start anywhere in the spirits industry, but was in tech or something else. And was like, I'm doing it, getting paid well, but I don't really care about it. And ended up finding your love and passion in a barrel. That's awesome, man. We'll get to know. Like, Ric, what about you?
Yeah, so kind of other end of the spectrum. So my story with the company starts in 2014. So I was actually a bar owner in Tallahassee, and I've been in the bar industry for a long time. And I met Phil McDaniel through him selling products. He came in with a vodka and a gin, and we got to know each other. And I said, "This can't be made right down the road from us." And he's like, "Yeah, we're 3 hours away." And we tasted it, and we loved it. And Phil kind of got us involved in helping change the law in the state of Florida to be a little more amiable to distilleries. And I went and spoke down at the Capitol a couple times, helped him with different things in DC. And I actually, in 2019, had to have a foot surgery. And I was in this cast. And the first time I had left my house since the surgery was to meet Phil for breakfast. And he kind of presented this idea that he was opening up a second distillery in St. Augustine. And he told me he thought I was the right guy for it. So, I had to mull it over, because as of that point, I was an amateur distiller. I had done some brewing, I'd done some let's not say at the house. I'd done some things that I was brewing in the kitchen. We'll call it that. And
You were experiment. You were baking, and set extra yeast and extra stuff. Yeah, yeah, it's fine.
exactly. I was learning the trade on my own. I was getting all the failures out of the way.
Hmm.
So I think he thought I was the right guy for it, and he lured me over, and that's how I got involved.
That's such an awesome story. That's so unique too. The fact that you guys are at the opposite end of the spectrums that ended up working together beautifully and working together for some time now. How long have you been exactly working together?
For 6 years. It'll be 6 years in
Yeah.
January.
That's awesome. That must have built a great relationship, friendship, and love of that industry and spirit. And say Augustine Distillery is beautiful. For anyone who has not been there, you are what the number one tourist toured distillery in the United States, I believe.
We're up there. I mean, I don't think we're number one in the country, but we're fortunate. We get a lot of visitors and a lot of folks get to share our story and, hopefully educate on, this historic process that we take part in, get them a little stoked about what we do. But I think there's some folks in South Florida that hit some heavy numbers, and certainly the Bourbon Trail, and those folks probably doing more than we are. But we're fortunate to have what we have, and it's what makes the business a reality without a doubt.
Sure. You did speak about the uniqueness of the fact that your spirit is aged and distilled in Florida versus somewhere where it's you expected in Kentucky and the Bourbon Trail, et cetera. When you're dealing with the standard for the aging of whiskey and all that, like how does that like Florida for anyone who's not from here? It's humid and gross half the time. It's either 108 degrees and sticky or it's rainy. How
Mhm.
do you deal with that when it's talking about like the maturing aspect of whiskey and just how to refine those flavors where you don't get all the seasons that get other areas of the United States or the world?
Well, first of all, you have to throw out the mindset that you're going to make what they make in Kentucky. You have to just get away from this idea that there's like one standard thing and that's the only thing it's ever going to be. So, bourbon is already, by definition, a tight category. There's a lot of rules that make all of the bourbons that exist pretty similar. 51% corn, new charred oak barrel, all of these rules. But the one thing that we have that they don't have in Kentucky is our environment. So, what we aim to do at St. Augustine Distillery is lean into that as heavily as we possibly can, because that's something that's unique to us and is something that we can show off with pride. So we love the Kentucky guys. They arguably, perfected the industry in a lot of ways, and we honor them. But we're going to do it our way.
Yeah, very different. And honestly, like I said, one of the things that I enjoyed about your product is that you do lean into the Florida, right? You lean into that heat. Well, the uncomfortable heat, Florida, and there's a lot of the cocktails when you do the tour in that tourist area, there are some cocktails and all this, and you lean into the local and supporting all that. Um, is that becomes like a big focus initially, or was it something an offshoot, or was it as a former bartender, Rick? Did you want to create a whiskey or a spirit that's going to be cocktail and focused on the local and the seasonal?
So it's always on my mind. It's tough when you're creating whiskeys to figure out exactly who your customer is, because ideally your customer is everybody, right? You're landing in bars, you're landing in liquor stores, you're being drunk neat, on the rocks, in cocktails, all this stuff. But the reality of that is that it's very hard to produce one whiskey that meets all of those things. So we lean a lot into specialty finishes that are really good to be drunk neat, on the rocks, however you want it. And then we try to craft things like Florida Straight to be a little more approachable, or toasted. Toast is particularly good in cocktails. So cocktails are huge for us here, and it's the way that we present our spirits on the tour,
Mhm.
because we learned very early on that nobody wants to get off of a trolley and have a shot of vodka at 10 in the morning. Just doesn't make sense, So we present it
Each
in
their own.
well, most people, I should say.
Yeah.
So we present it in a cocktail format, and it actually works out really well. It's an easy, approachable way for them to try the spirit, try it with our mixer, and then at the end of the tour, if they want to try it neat, go for it.
Okay. Have you developed or created a finish that would pair nicely with a cocktail you had in mind ever, or is that something that just
Yes. So me and Will were actually talking about this just before the podcast started. So we're doing a bunch of really interesting things in 2026, and I'm always looking for particular finishes that can be allocated to one thing or another. So, for instance, we in our reserve rum, we use a barrel Vino de Naranja, which is a Spanish sweet orange wine cask. And just as an experiment, we did a little bit of gin in that too to see what would happen, and it came out really kind of bitter citrus, which was really cool. But the first thing that we realize when we taste something like that is the only place that this is going to live is like a Campari substitute or something behind a bar where they're doing is a modifier. So we do have those in mind a lot. It's not typically what we aim for because we know that we land on the shelf as a whole bottle, neat drink most times. But when you talk about rum, gin, vodka, that's always landing in cocktails. So we're happy to do most of that stuff that way.
Okay, that's all. That is awesome to know. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've actually planning that before I even had you on the show. I was planning on featuring your gin on a cocktail I'm making for Christmas. For one of the, it's gonna be the Mrs. Claus nightcap, and it felt like it was just a perfect gin for it. So you'll see it on socials for anyone who's watching or whatever. But definitely, I would say that I've shown that appreciation for your spirits as well. When like I could tell those rums are perfect for like a the classic daiquiris and all that, and you can kind of have some riffs and mess around with it. But speaking of just kind of like the facility itself and just ice plant itself, Will, operating that modern manufacturing facility inside of a historic 1907 ice plant, like it probably has some logistical nightmares or headaches or something like that might pop up when you think about still keeping that charm of that historical building. For those who have not gone to the ice plant, you're missing out. It is gorgeous. It looks so, I would almost say like prohibition style, like facility, a speakeasy.
Yeah,
Um,
it's that era, no doubt. I'll give kind of quick snapshot just of what it was. So our facility, like you said, was built in 1907. It was originally a tiny little power plant that was converted into Florida's first commercial ice manufacturing facility. And it produced ice for almost 50 years into the mid 1900s. And then refrigeration became common and cheap enough that kind of went away. And this building, to anybody who's from St. Augustine, has been known as the old ice plant like forever. And newcomers here, they think we slapped that name on it or the bar slapped that name on it. And it's just not the case. The building has been what it was for a long, long time. And our owners identified it as having the space and the historical significance that it could become part of our story. And we really take seriously the responsibility to be the stewards of what really is a historic site. In Florida, our main power company, FPL, they were the previous owners of our facility. We still work with them once a year. We do like a holiday event that promotes both of our efforts and just kind of keeps this history going. But through all of it is the balance of preserving history, preserving charm, as you put it, but you still got to function, right? Safety, efficiency, operational excellence, it's got to come over everything. But I think a lot of what we do is look to adapt solutions to our style. So, for example, we did a revamp on our bottle your own system, which is where most of our best single barrels go. So, if you guys get a chance to come up, definitely check out the single barrels we have in the bottle your own.
mhm.
Usually, the best and best barrels that we have are going to end up there. And we found a great system. It was going to be an operational improvement. We're going to go from one to two offerings. We're going to be able to put the tanks that we fill from where our normal bottling tanks go so we could change them midday. And this is lost on a lot of people, but to Rick and I, it was huge. But the other piece was we had to like completely redress this thing to look the part for us. So we're always balancing like what's going to get us to the next level, but how do we not, step out of place? This isn't a facility that you're going to see, virtual bartenders or TV screens everywhere. That's not who we are. But we also don't want to lose quality. We don't want to lose, operational efficiency. And most importantly, we don't want to lose safety. So, it's a balance, but I think we've done well over the last 10 years, and it's something Rick and I take seriously.
Yeah, it shows. Honestly, I can't stress it enough just because you guys on a show. I'm not saying it because my fiance and I have actually been there probably 6 times. And a good friend of ours, a couple, Dennis and Stephanie, got married at the St. Augustine Distillery a couple of years ago.
Oh, no
So,
way.
yeah, that definitely. I actually have pictures of. I'll share with you guys later on. They are huge fans of your distillery, and we've all loved it. So we were there for their wedding, and always appreciation of being there. And whenever there's a hey, we want to do a weekend getaway, it's just a beautiful place, location, and just everything you offer is top tier. To your point, 1907 wasn't the safest time for factories, so I'm sure there's a lot of things you've had to change.
And
And
we often think through just how tumultuous or dangerous that production process was, as there's a lot of made up stories in this facility. The staff has a ghost that they call Harold that they blame for any weird things that happen in the building. But
that tracks.
it's always, the comment of you wonder what serious accidents have occurred here because it ain't zero. I'll tell you that. But, for us, fortunately, we're not making ice anymore. We're making
Yeah,
whiskey. So the rest of it can be for aesthetics only.
yeah, it adds to the the look of the location, but
One of my
definitely.
favorite pieces of equipment in the whole building is that ammonia compressor that's right by the door. because it reminds me that, if you worked here in the building when it was an ice plant facility, I don't know if you know much about ammonia. You're not supposed to breathe the gas. You're not supposed to
Mm-mm,
be anywhere near it. So,
mm-mm.
yeah, we work in much better conditions here now, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, that's definitely haunted. There's probably at least one Harold there. So
Same.
yeah, I wouldn't be putting it past. I mean, St. Augustine is one of what is this? It was the most haunted place in America other than Savannah. It was something wild like that. So interestingly enough, because you
50 years old, you're gonna have to deal with some stuff. It's just how it goes.
yeah, exactly. But definitely gorgeous location. So when you're thinking about just how your motto is and how you guys operate, you champion that farm to flask philosophy. What is the reality of like something like that in Florida? Like how difficult is it to source local grains? For those who don't know, we have a lot of swamps. We don't necessarily have the most flourishing like fields of grain and rye and all this stuff. How do you balance it out and meet that volume requirement for such a popular local brand? Either one
Yes.
of you.
So over the years, we've really had to kind of not change that philosophy, but adapt that philosophy to our overall number one thing for our customers, which is quality. And just like you mentioned, growing grains in the state of Florida is hard, and we have had some quality issues with that over the years. So our promise to our customers is that we're always going to chase quality first, no matter what that means. And sometimes that means we have to go outside the state of Florida. I mean, for the last, I don't know, 8, 9 months or so, we've had to pull some corn from Illinois because we've had a particularly rough year for that kind of thing. And it does come and go, but our promise is that if we can find really great grains in the state of Florida that meet our quality standards, that's what we'll buy. If we can't, we'll go outside.
Awesome.
And I think volume. I
So,
can
so
also
about
dial
there.
mine back if you want.
Go ahead, Rick, one more time and I'll tell you.
Right there. Does that sound good?
Perfect. That's
Okay.
perfect. Will, if you
Okay.
can lower yours a little bit, and this way I can keep you guys even. Just a little bit. We'll go ahead and test.
Test.
A little higher. Just a smidge. And then we're good.
He's got a nicer mic than me. That's
Test.
All right, perfect. No, you have the Shore. The Shore brand is fantastic. I think it was just a game, especially if you have it on Phantom Audio. It sometimes will throw things off. I don't know how you have it set.
I'm running it through one of those road boxes because I use it to play D&D through every week.
You
And it's
play
been
D&D.
perfect.
You guys are massive. I'm a massive nerd. I play D&D
We're
like,
nerds.
bro, I played D&D and Pathfinder. This has not been recorded. Champions and all that. I used to have a every week game, and then the podcast started doing very well. It started taking up my time. So
So you
now,
make in Bourbon podcast. This is how friendships start, man. This is how it goes.
Yep.
bro, I will invite you to the next big game campaign we have. We're doing there's one that just releases like a Call of Cthulhu. We had Call of Cthulhu recently, but there's another one that's like kind of a darker one because all of our friends are tired of like the traditional D&D, so we're trying to like do offshoots
I grew up with Rifts. You hear that?
of what?
Rifts, Rafts.
No.
A sci-fi futuristic kind of tabletop D&D type game, but it's wild. You've got like big mech dudes, and then like you can be a junkie who, kind of like Fallout. You're finding drugs that pick up, your
Oh,
points.
sure.
It's a super cool game.
We're doing Warhammer 4400 soon or whatever it's called.
Nice.
I'm not running that one. I've only run I've run a champions campaign. I've run a Shadowrun and I'm ran a Werewolf Apocalypse. But
Man. Yeah, we get along with a lot of our team.
I'm seeing that. But you said you use it for D&D. I was like, D&D. Man, I played D&D like a week ago.
I played last night. It's 11 o'clock.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. That's
what
how
are
I
the
get my friends together,
Exactly. One of the cocktails I'm going to make uses the Matthew Lillard released a bottle called Warlock of the
Yeah.
whiskey.
So
So
that's bottled in Jacksonville.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's Manifest Distilling doing the contract for them.
That's dope as hell.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I'm planning on making a healing potion, a mana potion, and a couple of D&D cocktails. Just have to workshop them.
I love it, man. That's awesome.
All right, so we're gonna go right back. And we were talking about managing finding balance about sourcing your grains, everything. And by the way, if you guys want to talk about the nerd stuff on the show, please feel free. Like this could be completely fun and all that.
We're open book, man.
Yeah, yeah, we're here.
All right, dope. 3, 2, 1. All right. So Will, when you talk about supply chain and those concerns there, like what does that look like from an operational standpoint?
I mean, like Rick said, kind of quality over everything. We're not at the size that, like, when we're engaging potential grain suppliers, that volume's even a discussion. We're small, right? And we might be medium size in terms of craft distilling, but we're never at the point that we have to bypass a farm because they can't provide enough grain for us or whatever it is. So just like in the decision of where to buy our grains, quality comes first. It's the same thing for determining can they have enough volume for us. It's always just finding the best that we can.
Does that build like strong? Do you end up just using the same sources and the same partners throughout, and just kind of building that relationship and working that out?
We've had so many vendors that we've maintained since the early days of the company. Everything from grain to glass to, and just like anything in this business, relationships are so important. These people have supported us for over a decade. They got us through COVID and all the supply chain challenges that we've had. So 100%, we want reliable people that can stick with us. And there's certain elements of being in Florida that are just such an asset, like producing rum. Well, we've got so much incredible molasses that's a byproduct of sugar manufacturing. It's right downstate, right? We can buy this from South Florida, turn it into beautiful rum. But there's other things, since the beginning, malted barley doesn't grow well in Florida. It's never been a part of our grain recipe. I mean, it is a significant part of our grain recipe, but relying on those grains being from Florida has never been the mindset. And as Rick said, I think the shift for us happened maybe like year 5 or 6, which was we dealt with a couple of tough seasons and realized, both from a yield perspective, which in distilling terms is kind of an economic perspective, how much sugar is in the grain, how much are you going to get from your production, but also a quality perspective that kind of opened up our eyes of like, hey, this has got to be the flow chart. The flow chart is testing the grain, ensuring the quality. If it can be found in the state that meets our standards, we're there. We got to go beyond. That's what we're doing because the commitment is to make the best quality whiskey we can. And in Rick's eyes, in my eyes, that doesn't make it any less Floridian, right? You look at what we do, and I think what makes it Florida bourbon is a purpose-built grain recipe that ages well here in these crazy conditions. Really specific wood selection, working closely with cooperages to not only decide char levels and barrel size that are advantageous to Florida, but where's the wood coming from? How were the staves dried? And all that impacts, our ability to work through this climate and kind of leverage the heat and humidity as an asset without letting it run away and make the bourbon bitter or an oak bomb, which is what can happen if you aren't careful.
Oh, 100%. For there have been instances where I was super excited about trying a spirit, and then it turns into something that is just unpalatable. So finding that balance is probably very difficult and also enjoyable because you probably have to test a lot of whiskey and spirits.
Yeah, Rick.
Yes, we do.
What was that, Rick?
I said, yes, we do. All the time.
Speaking about just your like, you have a wide portfolio with bourbon, rum, gins, vodkas. Like, how do you mentally and physically switch gears on that production line? And what does that look like, even from a technical precision standpoint, about aging those whiskeys, or how you might want to, I don't know, make sure that those every other spirit still lines up with what your quality standards are? Right.
So, first of all, it's tough. It's tough as hell. Uh, Secondly, we do it a couple of different ways. So we have one still in house that only makes gin. That's a good thing because gin is very very oil heavy. When you run that through the still, what ends up happening is those oils set into things like gaskets. If you don't clean the still well enough, they set into the copper. So we dedicate that to gin because we don't want your bourbon, your rum, or your vodka tasting like gin. That would be a big mistake. Secondly, we do these big kind of chunks of production. So we'll do bourbon probably 9 months out of the year, and then we'll move on to rum. And in between each one of those seasons, what we're doing is we're kind of cleaning, resetting, replacing gaskets on all the stills so that they're neutral. And when they're really neutral, that's the time that we turn around and make our vodka. So we'll make these big chunks of spirits. But really, to answer your question, we plan everything out probably about a year ahead of time. So we know what we're doing very, very, very early on in the season so that we can kind of deal with a lot of these shifts for grain didn't show up, glass didn't show up, molasses didn't show up. There's always logistical issues, and you just kind of have to absorb that by getting everything here early and knowing what you do if you can't.
That's Yeah, it sounds like a lot of calendars and a lot of communication and ensuring that everyone's on the same page. So I commend you guys for running this giant business and still enjoying it every day, right? Making time for everything else that's important in life too. So commend you guys. Are there any spirits specifically that you guys are excited to share or upcoming that in the foreseeable future that you want to make sure goes off without a hitch?
I don't think anything we can blow the lid on specifically, but a program that Rick and I have been excited about for a couple of years is just our Explorer collection. This started with our cognac cask finished bourbon 21, and the collection kind of highlights our Rick's team working with partners across the world to source incredible finishing casks that are often really hard to get or can only be purchased one time, and finish our best available barrels in those barrels to create some really really finishes. And I think it balances well with what I'd say like maybe our domestic finishes are. Like we've got an incredible port finish bourbon that we finish in barrels from our local winery, killer, put it against anything in the market. Same for our toasted. Those barrels are coming from Kelvin Cooperage in Kentucky. But this program highlights Rick and his team finding some stuff that is typically unique, cutting edge. We've done a cognac finish. You mentioned the curacao finish before the pod. It's a fantastic one. Sherry finish. And this year we did our first Amburana finish, which we weren't the only people to do it, but I think we were the best people to do it. Rick and his team did a great job, and we've always got a few of those planned for the upcoming years. So that's just it's a fun thing. Anything that we do kind of one and done is always exciting for us. You get anywhere from 200 bottles to 1,000 bottles and get it, and then it's gone. It's gone for us too, and we all appreciate it.
That's fair.
And I'm going to share this because it was cool for us, but we do, we hear reviews from time to time, and we'll get our family members that'll reach out and they'll be like, "Hey, you got to watch this. This guy talked about you." And we recently got one where a guy reviewed our Armagnac finished bourbon, and it's someone that we've been watching for a while and someone that we respect. And he came across, and after he tasted it, he kind of like let it waft over his palate. And I believe what he said was, whoever decided this was the right time to pull this out of the finishing barrel knows what the hell they're doing. And we like all like high fived, and we were just like so excited about it. We were like, finally, somebody appreciates what we did here. So that was a really cool moment for us. So
That's awesome. And I know plenty of people who really speak highly of you. I don't know if Tim Bradstreet and Mike Buffa from / Distillery. I know that I believe they worked with you in the past. They speak insanely high of you. They've actually been on a show twice. They're really good friends of mine.
Dudes, we love those.
Oh, good. They are awesome. I've done some side stuff for them, photos. They've been on the show twice. We're part of the Florida Whiskey Society together. Really good dudes, and they love you guys out there. They speak highly of you and your product. I was like, oh yeah, I like their stuff a lot. You actually came up during one of our segments about an upcoming project. I guess they were planning with you about sourcing some of your whiskey for some of their blends. So
they've been sniffing around the Rick House. Tim, Mike, we got to get you guys up here. Let's close it out. But yeah, we got respect for them. A huge thing for us is transparency in what you do. In particular, an operation like them, where at least to start, it's primarily sourcing and blending. Transparency is so key, and I think those guys do it best in class. And they're great. They got good palates. They're making a good product.
The love is mutual /
Yes, indeed.
I'm gonna clip this and send it to them. I promise you.
Please do.
I saw Mike, I believe Friday or Saturday. I stopped in to pick up their Bad Santa. They can't be called the other name because of reasons. Their Bad Santa spiced rye, and it's fantastic product. We took some pictures for them.
Hey, is that the one that's changed?
Yeah, that's the one who changed the name because of people getting upset about the name.
That's killer, man. They always do a good job with that one.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. Them were in partnership with Christian Luga from Luga's Craft Distillery, another friend of the show. We've interviewed him, and their spice rum barrels. This is magic, and I didn't realize that they knew each other until afterwards. I'm like, oh, I'm good friends with Christian. Small.
We all know each other. It's a small industry.
Yeah, there's like 20 of us.
Yeah, that seems to be the thing. Like everyone just kind of falls in love with it and works together well. Well, when you talk about partnerships or just brands that you've worked with before, we talked about / a little bit. You worked with the Lost Lantern.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because they're prestigious independent bottler that only picks rare and special. That's what they're relatively known for. Tell us about that release and what that meant to your team and everyone.
Yeah, so working with Adam was awesome, and what I appreciate about him the most, I think, is his candor. Like he will come straight out and say, I'm going to pick through everything, and I'm going to ask you for more samples, and I'm going to find the perfect ones, and that's just the way it is. And we're happy to do that because we were honored to be the first people in Florida that he had ever considered. And actually, earlier today, saw a post on Instagram where they're announcing their partnership with us. And it's really cool. He's like sitting out in a lawn chair with like a little tiki mug in the snow all around him, like on this.
Everywhere else but here.
He says, this is the farthest south we've ever gone for a partnership. And I was like, that just makes us feel warm and fuzzy. But the process was fantastic. I think he asked for, 8 samples initially? And he ended up going with 2. and they were outstanding. And his notes on them were perfect. I mean, it's exactly the same thing I would have said about him. I expected him to pick different barrels than the ones that he did, but that's part of his brilliance is that he sees something that other people don't. So I'm really proud of his selections, and I can't wait to get my hands on that bottle.
Yeah. I'm excited for it. Will, go ahead.
I got nothing else to say. Stoked. We've done a couple of cool collaborations this year, and it's super fun. We like working with anybody that kind of has that collaborative mindset, and specifically folks that are transparent about what they're doing. And that was, I think, our third kind of barrel pick private blender that we did this year. But that's a prestigious one. We wanted to work with those guys for a long time. We're proud to be featured on the label. We're proud to be collaborating with Lost Lantern, Adam and his crew.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I saw that, and it was a massive. In my mind, I was like, "This is St. Augustine's doing it." Like all these partnerships, I'm seeing you guys everywhere and starting to pop up as many places as possible. So, very. I'm not originally from Florida, but as a Florida guy now, I'm proud to be part of like that area. It's like, oh yeah, you got that from St. Augustine. Ever been?
As our founder Mike would say, we're a 13-year overnight success.
Yeah, I love that. But when we talked earlier about just even with Lost Lantern saying the furthest down south they've gone, speaking about like the intricacies of operating in Florida versus other states and other laws and Florida whiskey versus Kentucky bourbon, all that. Can you kind of talk us through like what else goes into it? I know, Will, there's probably so many legal things and everything going on there.
I mean, the legal landscape has been such a road in Florida. And, Rick talks about his connection growing up in the capital. That's kind of how he met our founder. And my favorite story he didn't mention, which was, Phil was out there working with legislators trying to help move these laws forward. But also, you got to sell while you're on the road, right? So we stopped into this cool bar that Rick happened to own and tried to pitch his vodka. But Rick tells me it was 9 p.m. on a Friday. And you don't go sell to a bar at 9 p.m. on a Friday. So
People
Rick
talking about
got to teach.
yeah.
um, it's been part of our DNA since the beginning, and it has to be because when we started the company, or rather when our founders started the company, if you came and visited, we couldn't even sell you a bottle. Our original business model was to use the bar and restaurants license. They have a full package license to sell, and fortunately, it evolved beyond that. But it's just ludicrous, and we earned the right to sell 2 bottles per year. It worked up to 6, and ultimately in 2021, thanks to the support of many Florida distilleries through the Florida Craft Spirits Association, we were able to all come together, come to the same page of what mattered, and remove bottle restrictions, raise how much you could produce and still be considered craft, which is what gives us the privilege to sell. And a huge one for distilleries all over the state that really wasn't impactful for us is the ability to sell drinks by the glass. So overnight, you saw most distilleries become little cocktail rooms, which is great. We knew it was huge. We're kind of the exception because, we're a bottle shop more than anything else. We've got full scale bar and restaurant in the facility that we have a great relationship with, and that's important to us. So that's the journey, right? And our founder Philip has just spent so much time, effort, money to really make this happen, and we've seen this thing grow. And the reality is, when we started, there was 2 other active craft distilleries in the state. Now there's over 100, and that's because those barriers have been eroded. So we're proud to be a part of that. But the work's not done. Distilleries in the state still are limited compared to other states in the nation. We still can't. There's no self distribution of any capacity. While many states have limited self distribution, whether it's regional, whatever it is, there's no direct to consumer sales. We would love to be able to ship our products. We get lots of folks through our facility every day who don't live in the state of Florida. And that's primarily where you can find us. We're Florida, a little bit Georgia. We want to be able to touch you via the mail. And my favorite story about it all is what allowed direct to consumer wine and beer sales in Florida was in large part due to our neighbors here at the San Sebastian Winery working hard in the same manner, getting legislators to understand and listen to our story. But what's hilarious, they're 2 blocks from us and they can ship you wine when you visit. You come to my distillery and I can't ship you bourbon because why? So the work's never done. It never will be done. You'll always want more, but it's the first time in my life that you see the tangible impact that these decisions that lawmakers have on businesses, and more importantly, the people that work for these businesses. So we still look forward to the future. We want one day for you to be able to come and we can ship it straight to your door. We're glad to have some retail partners that can find a creative way to do it, but it doesn't give us full 50 state coverage. So it's been a long road, but it's cool to be a part of it, and it's not just us. These distilleries working together. I hear the term co-opetition a lot in our industry, but it's so true. I mean, it's small versus big, and even that, it's not like we have a disdain for big producers, but the alignment, the supportive atmosphere that craft distillers have, it's unreal, man. You don't see it in a lot of industries.
Yeah, and it is not any shots at bigger producers, obviously, because I'm a smaller podcast, so they want to sponsor one day. I'm joking, but I think that there's something to be said about like you can feel the love and like the attention to detail, and this is what matters to you versus just stamping it. Just the same, just some linear process that doesn't really matter to the people that are in the building. They're just doing a thing where you guys will spend the time, make sure you put up extra effort into that product, make something you're proud of, and you celebrate those accomplishments, like working with Lost Lantern, working with other brands, and being able to do those things. And I love, what was it? What was it? One more time, you broke up.
Co-opetition.
Co-opetition. That makes a lot of sense. Hey, we're in the same business, we're rivals, but we're also working towards the exact same goal. Not rivals, it's friendly competition. There's enough space. There's enough drinkers for everyone. I promise you, it's Florida.
I mean, the old adage is just rising tide floats all boats, and we buy into it, man. We drank that Kool-Aid, and it hadn't misled us yet.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way of like just operating and seeing it all. Um, so Rick, I have a question for you about beat up barrels. You've gone on record saying that you're going to go for the beat up barrels when you're picking those single casks finished. And earlier you talked about Lost Lantern didn't pick the barrels that you expected. Like because you said tough times build character. Like, talk to us about that and what came through that. You said, like, were you surprised I knew that?
No, I love hearing things I said later, you know?
Hey, there's going to be an episode of a podcast that's going to come out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, true, true.
Arthur is well researched. He's like Sean Evans of the bourbon podcast world.
Hey, don't tell people my secrets.
But yeah, it's true. The uglier a barrel is, typically the better it tastes, you know. And when I'm looking at barrels, really those kind of pressure fluctuations that you see in the heads of the barrel. So actually learned this from Sydney at Heaven Hill. I was on her podcast a little while ago, and we were talking about kind of like tips on how to look for single barrels. And one thing that she mentioned that I had never really been able to put into words before is that the pressure changes inside the barrel. The place where it will actually show up the most is in the barrel heads. It'll start to warp them. And pressure changes are awesome because that means you're getting more fluctuation in the liquid inside the barrel. I had never really considered that a warp barrel head was a dead giveaway, that that's going on in an extreme kind of micro environment inside that barrel. So it just kind of leaned into something that I've been saying for years, which is uglier barrels taste better. But, you know, she had a way to really point it out as something that was scientific. So way to go, Sydney. Thank you.
Shout out to Sydney from Heaven Hill, because that's actually a brilliant way of that. That's really, when something's so smart but simple at the same time. I was like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Now that someone said it out loud.
Well, they say you don't know a subject really well unless you can explain it to a 5-year-old, right? So, treat me like I'm 5 is all I'm saying.
That's a great way of saying it. Well, what are your thoughts about the tough times build character when it comes to barrels and what you've experienced?
I mean, I just trust Rick and his team. They usually give me good whiskey to drink. So, funnest thing about working in a distillery is someone like Rick walking up to you with a glass of something saying, try this. Cool. What is it? So,
Will always ask me what is it, and he damn well knows my answer is going to be, I'm not telling you until you tell me what you think of it.
yeah, but you mentioned we have a wide portfolio. We also manage two distilleries, one of which does, everything from liqueurs to rye whiskey. So it's like it's debatable. And if it isn't yellow or orange, I can narrow my decision down, but I still kind of got to know what is it.
Not until
No,
after.
no, not that. I was about to say, I'm like, that'll skew your answer. I'm on Rick's side with this. Like, I can't hint at things because then you'll be like, you're gonna make a predetermined decision, kind of on what you're gonna get. I'm not
No
doing
matter
that.
how small the bias is, it's there, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So I know that internal culture is a huge part of your story. And what is it? Legend has it that some of your best distillers started as construction workers um, on the site. So they were around it long enough that they're like, you know what, I want to work here. Like, how do you identify and like kind of cultivate that talent and ensure that people who care about the business and industry are always there? Like, what does that look like? If I'm a construction worker, I'm putting down tile, putting down brick, and I'm like, hey, are you guys hiring? What does that look like for you guys?
All right, well, I got to touch on that legend, which we say the legend of Day One Danny is that story there, which is when our owners were getting started, they got really good advice from Jake Norris, formerly of Stranahan's, 80 Laws, kind of a real man in the industry and a guiding light for us. And Jake said, if you're going to be functional, you need a MacGyver. Things are going to break constantly. You need someone who can correct it. And when our owners were renovating the facility from the get-go, there was this guy that kind of took charge. His name's Danny Rodriguez, Honduran descent, and has been classically trained to work on everything from Caterpillar cranes, hydraulic systems. The guy can do freaking everything. And fortunately for all of us, they recognized that early and hired Danny to be our first distiller. And he still is like the caretaker of the facility. He also happens to be a damn good distiller. And we make a rum once a year that celebrates Danny and his Honduran heritage. That's our D. Rodriguez and Sons Overproof rum. But he touches everything we do, bourbon, rum, vodka, gin, but also the facility, ensures it's safe, ensures it's maintained. And he really is a father figure to the entire company. And the guy's just everything from values to work ethic. He's the man. And I think always looking and recognizing talent is something that's permeated from our founders to Rick and myself to everyone in the organization. And look, we're a small company. You're not always hiring, but you bet your ass we're always looking for good talent. And I think there's no better example of that than Danny and what he brings to this team. He was called Day One Danny because he's our first employee ever. Still here.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love that he exists. I love that the legend of Day One Danny exists. I actually had it on my notes to kind of round that out, but definitely something that I don't have that bottle. And I was not I did not know that. So I'm going to buy that as soon as I possibly can. I'm going to make something with Day One Danny's bottle.
Yes, you'll love it. Talk about daiquiris. It makes the best classic daiquiri you'll ever have.
Oh, then yeah, we'll mess around with some daiquiris.
If you'll indulge me, I think I can tell you a quick Danny story that really encapsulates his personality.
Oh, please do.
So first off, to Will's point, tenacity over everything. That's what makes a great employee. If you want to be here, we want you to be here. That's bottom line. But my favorite Danny story, at one point, Will and I were both at Citygate, and then we kind of took over management at both facilities. And when I first got here at St. Augustine Distillery, I was getting to know the crew. I had known all of them for a long time, but, getting really tight with them. And I was kind of stressing out because there's a lot more to do. There's a lot of extra things now. And I was typing some emails on my phone, and Danny walked up to me and he patted me on the back and he pointed at my phone and he said, "Rick, that's what's going to kill you. Throw it in the water." And I was like, that's some damn good advice, Danny.
He was warning you about doom scrolling and cell phone addiction for a long time. Before.
I think it was more technology and the
work
stress from email, because Danny's got this Zen thing, man. When he's at the still, he's happy. When he's turning a wrench, he's happy. And he's something to aspire to, for sure.
Well, were you going to say something? You came off mute.
Resounding, yeah. I mean, the guys. I feel like every podcast we talk for 20 minutes about Danny, but it's just so how much we love him. And it's wild. One of my favorite things is if you ask me, like, what's the most American dude in your life? It's Danny, who grew up in Honduras. Because he is everything about what's positive about this country. He's good values. He's hard work. He's taking care of your family, and that's it. And that just, it's infectious, man. And yeah, I mean, Rick, I hate to tell you, you still got to answer emails. It is what it is. But
no, I know it's part of the job. But what's funny is we all know Danny's never going to hear any of these. We gush about him. We love to talk about him. There's no way he's listening to a podcast. He doesn't even know what Spotify is.
I'm going to send him this clip somewhere. Does he have an email? Or just send me a letter?
The one time I heard Danny talk about Spotify, he had a brother who was in a very famous Honduran band called Banda Blanca, and he made me pull out my Spotify and listen to Banda Blanca, and it's awesome, by the way. To all of you listening out there, look up Banda Blanca. That's Danny's brother.
Banda Blanca. I'm going to tag them. I want to send this directly to Danny. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I will. I'll send it to you guys. You go ahead and communicate with him.
Hey, go ahead and say it. I'll make him listen to the podcast.
All right. Well, Danny, this is for you. We're going to make a daiquiri using your rum, and thank you for everything you've done for these gentlemen. So definitely.
Thank you, Danny.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll come up with a creative name. I'll look into some things. So, all right. So I know that we've talked a lot about the wine portfolio. We talked about the partnerships. I'm kind of curious about this moonshine, the apple pie moonshine and all that. Now just kind of about your kind of origin to this. Tell me more about what that brand is, what was going on there.
So the origin story of Citygate. So here, I'll give you just as honest of an answer I can. Our owner spent 6 years, maybe 8 years at that time, but the St. Augustine Distillery had been open for 6 years, helping push legislation forward and helping remove barriers to entry to distilling. And they wanted to capitalize on it, and they weren't done with creativity. They were inspired by some of these moonshine companies that existed in the Gatlinburg area. We have a close friend, shout out Josh Stokes, who's with Sugarlands Distilling, and we just saw that there was a piece of the market we were missing. There was people that wanted to appreciate well-made spirits, but they liked things a little different. They wanted stuff that drank more like a cocktail. They weren't into high-proof traditional spirits. They weren't going to make a cocktail on their own. So the idea of Citygate was kind of born. And just like everything we do, we wanted to put a Florida spin on it, whether it's flavor creation or our bottles feature, different historic icons of St. Augustine. So it's kind of like the ultimate souvenir to the city. And it's just evolved from there. We had vodka, rum, and moonshine, added flavored whiskey about a year into operation. But everything we do there is done with care. The flavored whiskey is a great example. A lot of flavored whiskeys in the market, there's no aged component. They're adding bourbon flavoring, basically cherry vanilla flavoring, adding color to a neutral spirit base, and then that's your canvas that you layer your flavors onto it, whether it's peanut butter, salted caramel, whatever. Rick and his team source a younger bourbon that is then mixed with a grain neutral, so the bourbon flavor, the whiskey flavor is real. It's coming from oak, and that becomes our base. Obviously way more expensive to do it that way, but that's our goal. We want to show that you can make quality flavored spirits, and it's been successful. When we get a couple in the distillery, and we started used to say, oh yeah, the guy's going to love bourbon and the woman's going to love Citygate. Not always the case. Get a lot of dudes that come into Citygate and that's their jam, and he's like, yeah, my wife, we're going over to St. Augustine Distillery next to try some bourbon because that's what she likes. And it's we're able to coexist. We're able to steer customers to each experience, but they're real different. At St. Augustine, we're about education, traditional spirits, teaching you about the process. Citygate, it's there, you'll see it, but the experience is more of like almost a comedy routine. We've got this incredible cast of folks who a lot of them have a theater background or just a desire to perform, and we've got a flavored spirits tasting that was just better than anything I've ever experienced. And then just recently this year, we released our first traditional spirit. We did a sourced rye. It's called 1565 Rye, named after the year St. Augustine was founded. And it's been just killer. We're having a lot of success with that. The team loves it, and we're proud of that brand, just as proud as we are of this one. And the two coexist well. And we think they both represent St. Augustine well.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check it out because I'm very partial to rye. And just an offshoot and kind of joke, my significant other would be that woman who is going to be there for the whiskey. She's gone to a girls' night at a sushi restaurant. I like to tell this story because the waiter came over, asked everyone what they wanted, Cosmo, whatever, blah, blah, blah. She's like, I just want a double Rittenhouse neat. And the guy just like stopped. He's like, I don't know if you knew what you ordered. And she's like, did I stutter? Like, I would like the drink that I ordered, sir. I could read. I know what it is. I've had it before. And when it comes over her, like everyone's having it, there's nothing wrong with fruity, flavorful drinks. I'm not saying anything's wrong with it, but she stood out amongst her friends and like, can you drink that? She's like, yeah, I do it all the time. I got all that's too much sugar. And she just goes about her business. And to this day, it's one of the coolest things and one of the most enjoyable things is seeing that I could share that experience when we go to distillery. She legitimately wants to try your stuff.
Yeah.
She's not there to just be my plus one.
Rick and I are fortunate to have the same experience with our partners, and shout out to Rittenhouse. That was kind of the whiskey that started it all for me. So my first like legitimate old fashioned I made with Rittenhouse rye, following some YouTube video, and then now here we are. I got a lot of bottles at home. It's a problem.
Yeah, I have way too many bottles. Rick, what was your first like old fashioned?
First drink?
Yeah,
I'm gonna be real honest here. My first drink was a Canadian Club out of a freezer.
out of a freezer.
Yeah, my brother gave me that a long time ago, and I'm astounded that I got into the industry after that. Nothing against Canadian Club, good whiskey. It's just when that's your first go. Whew.
Yeah, it's not easy. Not easy after that. All right. Well, speaking of easy drinkers, you did speak briefly about your port finish and how popular that is. And I'm not gonna lie to you, those are bangers. Those are fantastic finishes. Obviously, I have the curacao finish, but those port finishes. Tell us about that and how popular that's become amongst people who aren't necessarily traditional whiskey drinkers. And just that process, Rick.
So it's really just another way to introduce bourbon to bourbon fans or non-bourbon fans. And for us, it really highlights a local partnership. So Will already talked about San Sebastian right down the street. When we talk about being very Florida, being very local, what we mean is if we can get a really cool barrel from 2 blocks away, that's what we're going to do. So we have a rotational system where we give them X bourbon barrels. They finish their port in it. They give us that port barrel back. We finish our bourbon in it. We give it back to them. They finish port in it. It's been this ongoing cycle for years and years and years now. And it's really, really cool because we can time it to the day. So I don't know, how much you know about barrel sourcing, but a lot of times, people are all excited about, you know, Mizunara, or they're trying to get a sherry barrel or whatever it is. I don't know how people can reasonably think that you can get a sherry barrel emptied and then you can get it the next day while it's still wet and fresh. It's just not happening. That barrel's got to come across the ocean. It's got to land here. You got to fill it. So one of the great advantages that we have with the port wine is that the same day that they're dumping that wine out of there, we're hauling the truck down there. We're picking up those barrels. We're trying to get that whiskey in as fast as we can. And it really creates like a fresh, really cool, very heavy experience where we don't have to age it for quite as long as most people would on a drier port barrel. And it allows us to get true to fruit, nice stone fruit flavors. Very, very cool. And we put it at 102 because we think it's just got that kind of light crispness that kind of goes over everything. Goes really well if you put it on ice, cocktails, however you want to do it. We're proud of that.
And I think as impactful as the freshness is because of that barrel exchange program we're doing one turn. If you're buying a barrel from overseas, you're going to use it as many times as you can. And every turn, it becomes more and more inert. So because of that program, it's heavily saturated when we get it here, only one turn, and then back to the winery. And the same reason we love it is the same reason they love it. They get that bourbon influence on their port wine. So it's just this cool, not only a beneficial relationship to the businesses, to the product, but it's also sustainable, right? We're not destroying these barrels. There's some in this rotation that predate our distillery. They used to buy bourbon barrels from a distillery in Georgia that doesn't exist anymore. We've got some crusty old barrels that are part of this program, and they taste so dang good.
That's right.
Crusty old barrels. That's I love that. No, yeah. If for anyone who has not tried their port finish, it's definitely one of the ones that I really thoroughly enjoyed when I was. I remember I think it was my second visit there. We got to taste test it, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, I didn't know enough. Honestly, it was early in my bourbon enthusiast journey. It's like, what the hell, port finish? Like port wine, like from where? Oh, from right next door. I was like, so it was a lot of things that was going on in my head. I was like, this is the best thing they have here because it was just delicious. And obviously, you're going to try more things. And I'm like, this is fantastic. It was the second bottle bought from you guys ever. First was your gin, and then it was a port finish. So, and I know that there are brands out there like Angel's Envy that have talk about port finish and all this. I still look, I could say it, I like yours better than Angel's Envy any time of the week. And
We appreciate that vote of confidence. We love those boys too, though. Shout out Kyle.
oh yeah, no, I love them. I love their product. I love their rye finished in rum barrels, all that. Like nothing against. But when I tried yours, it was so distinct, and I don't know if it's. And I'm not trying to underplay, but I don't know if it's because it's so fresh because it's right next door. I don't know if that flavor just comes through heavier.
100%. You can even see it in the color. I mean, if you hold it up for, our Florida Straight's at 88 proof, but we could pull a single barrel, bring it down to 102. The port is darker and more red. It almost has this kind of garnet hue to it that you
Mhm.
just don't see with other finished whiskeys, even ours. We do cognac finish, curacao finish. We talk about some of this Explorer collection stuff. It doesn't alter its look in really any way. Flavor, for sure. But like Rick said, longer period of finishing required. Our cognac finish spent over a year in the cognac barrel to get the flavor we wanted. So a lot of, I think, um, I hate the term success. I think what I'm so proud of Rick and his team is how careful they are with finishing times. It's not just everything's the same. We do everything for a 30-day finish. We've got products like our Amburana finish that spent less than 2 weeks in the barrel because any more would be too much. And then we've got products that have spent over a year. And it changes by the season too. We may say, hey, port finish excels for 6 months in the wintertime. Summertime, maybe less. Those numbers aren't accurate because I'm not Rick, but it's just they're so careful and conscious about what they're doing. And like anything in this industry, constant tasting, constant evaluation. That's what makes it good.
And I
If
do
you
want to point out one interesting thing about being small. There's a lot of advantages of being big, very few advantages to being small. But one of the things that we can do that a lot of other people can't is do 100% of our spirit aged in that finish. So we rarely ever dilute. I mean, when you get to, a much larger size where you're dumping 400, 500, 600 barrels, oftentimes what will happen is you will take a percentage of those and finish them in a port wine cask. And then you'll blend that to taste to a total volume to create a port finish bourbon. And that's just a tool that people use for consistency. Nothing wrong with it. But one of the advantages we have at the size that we're at is we actually can finish 100% of the spirit that says port finished on it came out of a port wine barrel, which is really cool because we have more control over it. We're not having to go into a 75,000 barrel rick house and pull things out one by one by one by one. We're, dealing with 2,800 barrels maximum, so 12 of which are going to get turned into port. So it's a really fun thing for us to be able to have that kind of small, intimate control over what we're doing.
So, excuse the technical difficulties that I might have experienced there. Mind your business. It's part of real time. I'm always genuine with you listeners at home. As we start to close out, because it is dark and dreary and not one of those poems, want to ask you gentlemen some closing questions, of course. If you could share a pour of any dram, yours or not, what would it be in with who? We'll start with Will.
Ooh, all right. um, I think it would be my late grandfather on my mom's side. He's a really interesting dude. He was a jazz musician. He played trombone. He's actually on one of Miles Davis's album. His like favorite quote was Miles Davis said, "Mike Zwerin's pretty good for a white guy." And he was just an interesting figure in my life. In my childhood, he lived in Paris. He wrote jazz reviews for the Herald Tribune and come a couple times a year. We'd be I grew up in Orlando, so it'd be 100 degrees, and he'd come in a black trench coat with like a black hat. Just he was an enigma, and some sage wisdom he gave my brother and myself when we were like just starting to, be teenagers and get into trouble. If anyone ever offers you something, take half. You can always take the other half later. And I would love to share a pour of our Florida bourbon with him because it just would be a cool experience for me. And I never got to spend time with him as a true adult, so that'd be the one for me.
It's a good answer, Rick. Remember, we are scoring these.
Impossible to follow that up.
That's a good one. I like that.
I've been very fortunate in my life. I've been able to, share drams with most of the people that I would want to, including my grandparents, my dad, my mom, my partner Dana. I've had many many drinks with them. So I'm gonna make this one a little less personal, a little more funny. The one person that I would love to have a dram with is Andre the Giant.
He will outdrink you.
That's the reason why.
Because ball in his hand.
Because he famously drank like what 120 beers in one night or something, and I would probably pull out our 10-year anniversary. Oh, sorry, our 10-year anniversary bourbon, which is the highest proof that we've ever had. It was like 121 something, and I want to see how far he can get through that thing. Also, side fact, I was named after Ric Flair, so there's a little connection there. So I was thinking about this. So Andre the Giant, he's my man. We're gonna sit down and have a drink, and it's gonna be hilarious because I'm like 5'6" and he's like over 7 feet. So we're gonna be great together.
New brand idea: folding chair whiskey.
Someone write that down somewhere.
It hits you like a folding chair.
Yeah, hazmat hits you like a folding chair.
I love it. Do you guys carry a hazmat?
No, we've been low barrel entry proof for a long time. And Rick's kind of evolving. We've always thought like lower entry proof prevented bitter bourbon, and our battle is always like avoiding tannins from the barrel and trying to get the age that we want 4, 5, 6 years without it becoming an oak bomb. Our mindset's shifting a little bit. Rick's starting to lay down some higher entry proof now, and it's a couple years in and it's promising. But we were 110 for years. 115 is probably the most regular that you find for us, and we're pretty proof neutral. Certain barrels, particularly here in the facility where we get better airflow, we'll get a climb like that 10-year anniversary Rick was talking about. Those are barrels here on site. But most of our stuff kind of comes out pretty close to where it went in.
Okay. I was just curious.
109, 110 for what's in the market now.
Yeah. I was just curious because I know that barrel proof and high proof has become superbly popular. Hazmat seems like a badge of honor nowadays. So there's nothing wrong with it. No wrong with it. Just curious. All right. And last but not least, I like asking this question is what is your deathbed cocktail and who would you share that with if it's someone different? I'll start with Rick since we started with Will last.
It's going to be a Boulevardier, and I'm going to share it with my partner Dana, of course.
Love that. All right.
I love that cocktail. It's a good choice. One of my favorite. Mine would be a Corpse Survivor #2 because I ain't dying yet. So
Solid answer.
It's like a necromancer type of thing. Um, I love that. That's a really solid answer.
of course. So she's not
Oh,
dying yet.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. No, I love the Corpse Reviver too. I actually made that for Easter Sunday because I said Zombie Jesus Day. Um, it was.
If I see Luxardo liqueur and Lillet in your bar, I know what you're making, and I'm going right for it. So
It makes sense. It's a very solid cocktail with really great flavor notes. Well, guys, we're gonna close out. I know it's been a lot going on. It's the holidays for everyone, so I want to make sure you get time back. Right. So, where can people find you? Anything exciting you want to share? Social media? Go ahead and just plug away. Will, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, StAugustinedistillery.com, ST for Saint, so StAugustinedistillery.com. That's your resource. You want to come take a tour, our good ones you book online. You want to find our spirits online. You don't live in Florida, that'll give you the link to do so. We're most major retailers in the state, independents, wherever it is. But best way to experience us is to come visit. And you don't have to come to St. Augustine just for us. There's lots to do, including another great distillery called Citygate. But seriously, it's a piece of American history. It's a great town to spend, a few days, and just thank you, man. It's fun. This is probably our favorite thing about the job. We giving tours, working in the media, getting to talk about what we love hasn't gotten old, and I don't think it's going to. So thank you for the opportunity to do this, and thank to your listeners for enjoying what we make, because that's what makes it possible for Rick and I to do what we love to do.
100%, man. Thank you for being on. Rick, go ahead. Where can people find you? Anything you want to plug? Any social media handles?
Yeah, you can find me right in front of the still. That's where you can find me. We'll hit all the major stuff. So just come ask me questions about production. I'll tell you all about it.
All right, perfect. Well, gentlemen, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. And second, I can't wait to play D&D or video games with you in the future. Yes, off air, we discussed that we are all nerds here. Apparently, it did not know.
Just regular nerds.
Yeah, whiskey nerds, spirits nerds in general. I think I'd enjoy all spirits. But gentlemen, thanks for hopping on this call with me and spending some time. So definitely check out St. Augustine Distillery. Check out their spirits. I'm going to be featuring some of their cocktails for the holidays, including their gin, and maybe mess around with some stuff for day one Danny. So definitely have to try to get one of those, but I don't know if I can get those in store. I'll figure that out. It's not that far. But if you like what we're doing here, make sure that you like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Yeah, share with your enemies, share with your ex-girlfriend if you care, whatever. Just make sure someone's listening. And stay tuned for a lot of exciting features. If you're enjoying the cocktails, if there's a drink you want us to make or something in the flavor profile you want to suggest, I will happily experiment. One of our apparently fans' favorite cocktails is one point someone made me make a Haktua cocktail. That was interesting.
Did it last for 15 minutes?
Yeah. It was a complicated cocktail. It was a complicated drink, but people have been having fun with those. So if you're enjoying that, tune in. We have our Spirit School on YouTube where we talk about things for the entry-level spirits enthusiasts, something that's going to be palatable and being able to understand. So when you have people who know a little bit more than you and they're snobs, you could tell them, actually, I know some stuff. But enjoy, stay safe, happy holidays, drink responsibly, and don't text your ex, no matter how much the mistletoe misses them. Bye, guys.
Bye, Arthur. Thank you.